Hello. Hi. I was having internet or StreamYard issues, but I think I should be good now. Hi, welcome back. Let me know if it's good or if it's laggy. I need to make sure we're good before I start. If not, I'll have to restart the live because I don't like when it's laggy. But it's StreamYard. Hello, hello. Welcome back. Good to see y'all. Thank you for being here. This is new. This is new. This case to my channel. So I'm excited to get into it. Sounds good for now. Thank you. Hi, Ruth Ann. I saw Augie in here. Augie, good to see you. Cuffy says, I'm ready for this live. Really? You know it like the back of your hand. It's a sad one. ATS says, I think she really did have postpartum depression. Okay, yeah, let's get into it. Welcome back. We are covering the Lindsay Clancy case. And this case is thank you, Debbie. Good to see you. Hey, Ramon. This case is very personal to me. It does involve a lot of mental health. So this is your warning, mental health, death of children, medications, a lot of that kind of talk. If you are not familiar with the Lindsay Clancy case, she was a mom of three and she ended up unaliving all of the three of her babies. She strangled them with, I believe it was an exercise band. And then she tried to kill herself. So it's a very complicated case. She was going through postpartum depression, which reminds me a lot of obviously Andrea Yates, if you're not familiar with that case. And then as of recent, we've covered the 𝗃cie Fitzsimmons case, and she doesn't have custody of her baby out of Massachusetts. She doesn't have custody of her baby due to having to experience some unfortunate events, also experiencing postpartum depression. So it's a very touchy subject. But thank you for being here. We are going to deep dive this. I got my hands on all the documents and there's quite a few. We're not going to get through all of them today. I will have to make different parts of the lives, but I'll give you a little background on the case. I want to start with reading the lawsuit that just came out on January 20th of 2026. So her husband, has filed a malpractice lawsuit against her doctors because she was under care. She was on medications. That's her defense, that she was going through a lot of stuff mentally and with postpartum depression and whatnot. My notes say postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, schizophrenia, I believe maybe bipolar disorder psychosis, tagged with anxious distress with postpartum onset. So there's a lot of things going on here. And like I said, we can agree to disagree. And I just ask that we remain respectful when talking about mental health. I am very touchy on it. I have had a similar experience to Lindsay to some extent. I would love to share that one day, maybe not on this live, but maybe like a members only. I have a personal experience with a lot of these medications that she was on. And so I'm very interested to see what all the paperwork's. There's I think maybe a little bit over 1,000 pages. So we're not going to get through all of that today, clearly, but essentially we will. I believe her trial is now starting in July. So that's definitely one I will be covering, just as we will be covering 𝗃𝗃 Clancy here coming up. So I am excited about that. Hold, please. I dropped something. Hey, Psycho. Cool. Thanks. Thanks for being in here. She was a nurse. Yes, she was actually a labor and delivery nurse. So it's wild how that was what she was doing and she still was experiencing it, she was very aware of it. But so I want to read through the malpractice lawsuit as of recent January, and then I want to watch both of the arraignments. They're not very long. And then I was thinking maybe on part 2 we can get into the complaint, which is like 800 pages. So I'm sure a lot of it is like studies and other cases and whatnot, but I'm essentially going to look it over tonight and see what I want to read of it from it. So For now, let me just pull up this website. This is a very, very sad case. Yes, 32-year-old nurse, 5-year-old Cora, 3 at the time. By the way, this was in 2023. I want to say January. I'm sure we'll get the date from the paperwork, but I have to look. I don't care because I couldn't remember. So 3-year-old Dawson, 8-month-old Callan, I believe. And she was getting mental help back then, January 24th, 2023. There we go. Out of Duxbury, Mass. She is basically paralyzed now. So after she did this, she jumped out of a window, I believe, balcony, maybe. And so now she's paralyzed. So it's controversial because many believe that it was premeditated because she was like texting her husband before it. I don't believe that, and that's just my personal opinion. I don't think she was set out to kill all 3 of her children. She had been going through a lot mentally, and it's documented, which is why there's now a malpractice lawsuit that has to be, I think, completed, resolved before, I think, or I don't know. I don't know how that works. I don't know if you can have like a civil case that could tie into your criminal case. I thought one had to be done before the other, but I believe she has I don't know if I think pre-trial in July. So I don't know. But we're gonna read through it, and that gives a lot of details about like what she was going through. Also, I don't know I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a true crime girl, but I don't know what it would look like if she would like go be like Andrea Yates and go into a facility for the rest of her life, or depending on what happens with both cases, like does she go to prison, or does she might get the opportunity to like get the care she needs and then be let out. Like I don't know what that would look like. So we're going to learn together as we go. So let me pull up the document. You guys might know more than me. So this is just a little bit of background. This was written back in 2023. It says a chain series of events in Georgia court Tuesday. Prosecutors outlined minute by minute how they state Lindsay Clancy planned the murders of her young children, gave herself time to commit those murders, and then killed them in the home where they lived. On the morning of January 24th, prosecutors outlined what's like a routine day for a parent, with Lindsay Clancy taking her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, to the pediatrician for an appointment. She allegedly interacted with the receptionist, nursing staff, and doctor, none of whom noticed any issues with her behavior. She was allowed to leave without concern. Prosecutors said she then returned home and went outside with Cora and her 3-year-old son Dawson to play in the snow. They built a snowman, and she sent photos to her mom and husband and texted them with, again, no sign of distress or trouble. At this point, prosecutors say she began a series of calculated events that would ultimately lead to the deaths of all 3 children, Cora, Dawson, and her infant son, Callan. Here's a detailed timeline of the events that followed as described by prosecutors. And I'm reading this article that's based off of like the prosecutor kind of from that perspective. I like to get both sides of it. I could see what they mean, that maybe it was premeditated, but there's a lot of mental health stuff here. There's a lot. So you let me know what you think, I guess, in the comments and in the chat, like in the live chat. I hope she gets medical care. Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, if you have sound issues, yeah, refresh. Thank you. Yeah, it did. I agree, Melanie. Her husband stands by her and is suing the hospital too. Yeah, that's a document we're reading, and thank you for mentioning that, ATS. Yes, her husband is standing by her, and I think that's going to be really important to this case and to trial, right? So let's continue. 4:02 p.m. Lindsay Clancy searched Kids Miralax, a product used to treat constipation, on her phone. 4:13 p.m. She also searched for Takeout 3V, a restaurant in nearby Plymouth. Immediately after doing so, she used Apple Maps on her phone to determine how long it would take to drive from Duxbury to the 3V restaurant. 4:47 p.m. After going to the CVS website, Lindsay called the drugstore and asked if they had Kids Miralax. The manager told her no, but said they had other similar medications. According to the manager, her voice did not sound slurred or impaired and was a perfectly normal conversation. That kind of irritates me because, like, so what? She can talk perfectly fine and have be going through mental stuff like slur, I don't think that I guess I don't know. Lindsay 4:53 p.m. Lindsay texted her husband Patrick, who was working at his home office in the basement, and asked him if he wanted to do takeout from 3B restaurant. "Quote unquote, I didn't cook anything. It's been a long day," she wrote. Prosecutors said this was unusual because they usually got takeout closer to home, but it was a restaurant they had been to the past. Patrick texted back and said yes, and Lindsay asked him to check the menu. Um, I don't know. Like, I can see how it looks not so good, but I don't think that's abnormal till I look up the drive. I do that all the time. Um, 5:06 p.m. Patrick texted his wife and asked her what she was going to order. She responded, a Mediterranean power bowl, and then told her he wanted the scallop and pork belly risotto. 5:10 p.m. Lindsay called the restaurant, placed her order. The hostess said she noticed nothing out of the ordinary about the call, adding that she was able to understand the defendant. 5:15 p.m. Patrick headed out the door to run errands, and his wife texted him Pedialyte liquid stool softener a short time later. 5:32 p.m. Surveillance video shows Patrick at CVS in the children's medicine aisle. 5:33 p.m. Phone records show Patrick called his wife, but she did not answer. 5:34 p.m. Lindsay called her husband back, a call that lasted 14 seconds, telling him what medication she wanted. Prosecutor said Patrick said the call was completely normal, but he later mentioned that it seemed his wife was in the middle of something. 5:37 p.m. Patrick makes his purchase at CVS and leaves. 5:54 p.m. Surveillance footage shows Patrick picking up his takeout order at 3B restaurant and leaving. 6:09 p.m. After arriving home, prosecutors say Patrick did not see or hear his wife or hear their children, so he called Lindsay's cell phone looking for them. He went to their bedroom and found it locked. When he was able to get inside, he saw blood on the floor and an open window. His wife was on the ground outside the house with wounds on her wrists and her neck. She was conscious, and Patrick asked Lindsay, "What did you do?" She replied that she tried to kill herself by jumping out of the window. The ensuing 911 call, prosecutors say Patrick can be heard asking his wife where the kids are. She replied, "In the basement." When emergency medical technicians arrived, Patrick went to look for his kids and can be heard on the 911 call entering the home and the basement and then screaming in agony and in shock as he found his children, prosecutors say. Cora and Callan were on the floor in the den area of the finished basement, and Dawson was alone on the floor in his father's home office. Each child still had the exercise band used to strangle them tied around their necks when their father found them. Prosecutors say Patrick removed the bands and could be heard begging his children to breathe. He continued to scream uncontrollably, quote unquote, "She unalived the kids." Cora and Dawson were declared dead at the scene. Callan was taken by the medical helicopter to an area hospital where he remained on life support for several days before passing away. Lindsay Clancy was taken to South Shore Hospital and then transferred to a Boston area hospital with several broken bones in her back and rib cage. Her lawyer said Tuesday that she is paralyzed from the waist down, adding it is unlikely she'll ever regain motion in her lower body. Prosecutors said despite having recently finished a stay at McLean Hospital, a psychiatric unit in Belmont, and despite exhibiting suicidal ideation in the past, Lindsay was not suffering from postpartum depression or symptoms. And she was off of work. I do want to mention that she was on leave for these exact same issues, and it's very similar to the 𝗠𝗲𝗺𝗵𝗆 Fitzsimmons case. 𝗠𝗲𝗺𝗵𝗆 Fitzsimmons didn't unalive baby, but she was also seeking help and was on the leave from back to work, etc. And this is horrifying, but she was getting help. Kevin Reddington, Lindsay's defense lawyers, pointed that dispute that came out in court Tuesday. That is not a situation that was planned by any means, Reddington said. This is a situation that was clearly a result of mental illness. And it says Lindsay Clancy was arraigned Tuesday from her hospital bed. This was back in 2023 on these charges in the death of Cora and Dawson. She still has yet to be charged with the murder and Callan's death, but essentially she does. And it's really just really sad. That poor man. I know. I know. Oh, really? I just saw that. Hold on, please. Okay. How is it? Is that better? Some of you were saying the sound was a little. I hope it's better now. Was it bad? Like, do I need to start over? I definitely look up the drive time if I'm asking my husband to go get something. Yes, I do it all the time. Crystal clear. Okay, good. Good. I hope that fixed it. Much better. Okay, okay. I don't know how long. Were you guys able to hear the article though that I was reading? I know. Imagine finding that. I really can't. I can't imagine walking into the scene like that and seeing, you know, I guess we'll learn it as we go through the court paperwork, but I don't remember how because one of them was found in his office and the other downstairs, so I'm confused how the others got downstairs. So okay, let's see. We went through the timeline. Now let's watch the recent arraignment. Yeah, the one that just happened, and then I want to watch the old one. Or maybe we should do it backwards. Doesn't really matter. I mean, yeah, because how did two get into the basement and I think the baby was upstairs. Let's watch the most recent one right now. It's only 18 minutes. Hi, Angie. Good to see you. Please, and guys. Number 2 on the list, 43 CR 198 case 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆 versus Lindsay Clancy. This case is called for motion for the record defense president for the bar. Counsel for the record, begin with the call.
Good afternoon, I'm Debbie Straight with Conference.
Straight, good afternoon.
And Shannon, I'm here most of the company.
Anybody, good afternoon.
Kevin Brady, on behalf of Mr. Clancy.
Mr. Reddick, good afternoon. Ms. Clancy, good afternoon.
Let me see if I can turn on closed captions because I know some of y'all like. Oh, unavailable.
So this is a matter, on for a number of reasons here today, I think, but first, I just kind of want to know, we talked about the evaluation. And I know there was a motion that was just recently filed.
So yes, this did just recently. Oh, this did just recently happen. Let me get the date. And I also wanted to point out 1 day ago. I also wanted to point out that she's asking for two trials, basically one to decide about the mental health stuff, and then another one to decide if she's guilty or not. So they're requesting a split or a two-part trial, I guess.
Your Honor, good afternoon all. This is called the criminal court list with Plymouth County at Plymouth on 2/20/2026. First case is 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆 is number 2 on our list, 2383 CR 198, the case of 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆 versus Lindsay Clancy. This case is called for motions for the record of defense present before the bar. Counsel for the record, begin with the 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Demonstrate the Commonwealth.
Great, good afternoon.
And Shannon Buckingham, also for the Commonwealth.
Lucky, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Judge Kevin Briggs, on behalf of Lindsay Clancy.
Mr. Reddick, good afternoon. Ms. Clancy, good afternoon. All right, so this is a matter, for a number of reasons here today, I think, but first, I just kind of want to know, we talked about the evaluation.
This is the first time I believe she appears in court since it happened, because the other ones she was in Zoom due to her condition.
I know there was a motion that was just recently filed. And by recently, I mean just the last day or so. So I'm not sure we're gonna address those motions that were filed. We'll leave new gate on those. But one of them that was filed that I think didn't know if we could take up or and that's one regarding the taping of the Commonwealth's evaluation. Now, I know we've talked about this for a number of times, so I didn't know if we can address that of the Commonwealth's position. My understanding was that there was no objection to the taping of the evaluation, with the only proviso on that dealing with some of the actual testing. So I don't know where we stand on that. Call?
Yes, Your Honor, I did just receive these motions yesterday, so I don't have any case law to argue or anything like that, but our position was that we had no objection to the recording of the examination of the defendant. We would only object to recording of the testing process because of proprietary rights for the standardized testing.
Mr. Reddick?
I don't know the impact of videotaping the proprietary rights for standardized testing. First of all, I would suggest that might come under W for who cares. We're not here to protect proprietary rights of private businesses and enterprises, number one. Number two, personally, I don't really care about the proprietary rights. My concern is what the actual tests are going to be, how they're going to be implemented, how they're going to be administered. And I can speak to certainly Dr. Zanzello, my consultant who's here today. I can speak with him regarding that. I know as far as the testing is concerned, usually it's, the usual judges. You're well familiar. Minnesota multi-phasic personality, Beck inventory, all of those tests. So I don't really have a problem with them not videotaping the actual filling out of the squares and the actual tests. So I think we can agree that it would be the interplay between the government's doctors and Lindsay as far as them asking her questions and her related statements. That would be videotaped.
I don't propose to come to a stipulation. If we can, my suggestion is to pick a date to argue this motion prior to, if I remember, sometime early April, the dates that have been set. And that would allow all parties to kind of get media information as to the need for not taping the testing or the no need for it. So then I can fashion a decision. But I want to make sure that it doesn't slow down or interfere with the actual testing.
Your Honor, we have the testing scheduled for April 10th.
Right.
So also I wanted to let you guys know, her lawyer claims that she's still even suicidal now, even after it's been this long too. Remember, this happened January 24th, 2023.
I may have misheard, but I thought the testimony just said that he had no objection to not recording the testing. So if that's the case, then I think we could come to an agreement.
Ms. Reagan?
Again, I just would like to consult with my own experts regarding that, but I feel myself that I don't really have an issue with not recording, filling out little swears and that type of thing. I have no problem.
All right, so why don't we do this? I'm gonna allow the videotaping of that. That'll include the testing as well. If either party wants to strike that or impound that part of it, we can do that.
So you guys aren't confused. This was February 20th, 2026, and it's a pretrial hearing ahead of the trial coming up. Like I said, this was her first time appearing in court. But basically, the key points from the hearing are that it's focused on pretrial logistics and legal motions rather than substantive testimony. Lawyers for both sides discuss scheduling, the status of discovery, and key forthcoming issues as the trial moves forward. One major point of discussion was the defense's request to split the trial into two phases, like I had already mentioned to you. One, to determine the guilt, and second, to consider whether Lindsay was suffering from mental disease or defect at the time of the unalivings. This is part of the defense's broader strategy involving mental health claims. Another focus was the prosecution's psych evaluation of Clancy and the procedural questions about how the evaluation will be handled. The criminal trial is set to start in July of 2026. It was basically just a step towards base for the trial. So it was a pretrial hearing. That's very interesting. You know, the two phases of the split the trial into two phases. One to determine guilt and one to determine whether she was suffering. But I guess they go hand in hand, right? Because if they find that she's suffering from mental health or disease, then she wouldn't be guilty, or she wouldn't. It just depends what she has to do. So that's a little bit about this hearing that we're watching.
Could we do the reverse and just order the testing of the interviewing, and if there is some reason that defense...
No, I'm saying, there's no question about, it doesn't sound like either side is objecting to the evaluation itself being videotaped. The only issue, it seems to be, is whether or not the testing itself is videotaped. And now I'm hearing it probably isn't much of an objection. So what I'm going to, my suggestion was to allow the taping of the evaluation and the testing. And if somebody wants for me to reconsider it and come forward with any additional evidence as to why the testing itself shouldn't be.
Well, I think that, it puts the Commonwealth in a position where we received this motion yesterday. I haven't had a chance to research it or respond, and yet there will already be a decision allowing that taping.
But you want to tape it.
We're objecting to the taping of the...
Everyone wants to tape, you want...
I don't want to take the testing portion.
All right, okay. All right, so why don't what I don't want to do is I don't want to delay the testing.
Right.
So, how much time would you need to prepare for this motion?
As you well knows, I'm on trial now in Denver Superior. I'll have a jury out probably Monday or Tuesday. I would say a lot of the courts are putting that stuff at 2 o'clock in the afternoon now, so it's a little difficult. How about the 2nd of March? Could that work?
Three spread.
I'm preparing for a trial that starts March 9th,
I agree, Augie, with your comment. This truly needs to be more mental health support in place. This is a true pandemic of today's world, unfortunately. Yeah, and it's very controversial because I can understand both sides. Like, she was getting a lot of mental help and she was on and off a lot of psych meds. And so I do think that physicians should be held accountable to some point. But also, I also have personal experience and understand well enough that sometimes meds, they just work differently in combo with other things. And there's just a lot of factors. So it's a very complicated case. But I believe she had just changed her meds prior to they had just changed her meds prior to the killings.
Could we do it more towards,
But yes, you're right. Mental health needs to be taken more seriously and it should be more affordable and accessible. And I know there's like a lot of, stigma behind that.
March 23rd? And that gives us a couple weeks before the testing is supposed to start?
I don't have a problem, but just so everybody knows, that testing's going forward on that day, no matter what.
I apologize, I just looked, I'm paneling with judges saying on the triple homicide Fall River on that day.
Which day?
The one you just mentioned, which would be, I think, the Monday. Yeah, March 2nd. Thank you.
So Colin, you suggest the 23rd?
No, that's right, no, not March 2nd, it's the 23rd of March. Right, I'm paneling in Fall River on that day, but that would not be here. I'd certainly accommodate, really, if you throw out there March 10th.
She was a labor and delivery nurse, guys, too. So let's remember that and people around her say she was the sweetest and most nicest person. I don't think she purposely wanted to kill all 3 of her children. And her husband has been standing by her, basically. It's very sad.
You could be here in the afternoon.
Yeah, Trav.
Can we do March 2nd? No,
That's
it's a
fine.
week before purpose, and I don't want to jam you up in regards to that, but it sounds like, quite frankly, that may or may not really object to the testing. I think he just wants the opportunity to speak to his doctor. And so it may not even need a hearing in regards to that. But if it is, it's going to be a fairly short hearing. Most of this could be done through affidavits if parties have an objection to it.
I think what the court.
She did. She wanted to end her life. And I believe even right now, I believe she's still not doing too well. Yeah, she had wounds on her wrist and her neck, and she jumped out of the window.
I probably want to know is what is it, when they say protection of their proprietary rights, what is it they're concerned about? Is it that they don't want to videotape the filling out of the forms, or is it the actual content of the test? And I just don't know.
And I don't want to put the come up in the middle of this either. I know that you're dealing with other parties who want the.
And the thing with mental health and like, you don't understand it unless you've experienced it or have had or know someone that has. Like, it's really one of those things. And I know people get sick of hearing this, but it really does make a difference when you have experienced something with it or know someone or in your family or have watched it like long term. But she was going through a lot of like different diagnoses. I don't even know if they were for sure on what she had, but remember, it was postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis, I think schizophrenia, antisocial distress with postpartum onset, and BPD psychosis. So there was a lot going on here.
Their position.
And she's paralyzed.
They know the court. So I think we could do that. Most of it can be done through affidavits. I can take a look at it, and then if we need it, we can have a short hearing on the second.
Why did that just freeze?
To the evaluation, in regards to the evaluation, any issues regarding the discovery that's required under Rule 14.4, I guess now, that's required prior to the evaluation. The Commonwealth satisfied that they have what they need.
Defense counsel has stated that he's turned over everything his experts have reviewed and all of the raw data from their testing. So relying on that, I don't believe there's anything else at this time.
If anything comes up, just a little bit, I'm kind of going through my checklist to make sure that we have everything. So it sounds like the discovery for the evaluation is complete. There were 2 other motions that were filed. One is regarding juror information, and the other is the motion to bifurcate. Is that something we can argue in a second?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
all right, why don't we do that? Because I just got those two, I haven't reviewed them, but they'll give me a chance to go through those motions as well. So, the parties talked about, again, under, you know, the three of you know this very well, but in regards to the exchange of the document reports, is there agreement in regards to when Commonwealth's report is issued? Is there agreement between parties that there'll be an exchange of the defense report as well as the Commonwealth report?
We haven't talked about it, but as soon as we have the reports, then to turn it over and request theirs in return.
That's what practice showing is that once the government's doctors file their report, I provide ours to them and vice versa.
And then, but, so when you get there, if that's any different, then just, we can address that in court, but that's been my experience as well.
It's crazy that, you know, I get it, the prosecution, but if you can see there's proof, there's medical records that she's going through all of this stuff, and to say she intentionally did it, I guess that's why there's going to be a trial, right? But personally, I feel for Lindsay. I do. I really, really do. And like I said, unless you lived it or walked through it, it's people would probably look at you like you are crazy. Hey, Jakey. Yeah, she did. This is her first time appearing in court. We're gonna watch the arraignment from before after the article because we're doing a deep dive because I'm gonna be covering all of the documents. So I'm gonna make sure we had a good understanding of everything.
Already, the exchange between the parties. Now, in regards to scheduling, well, you know, we get the July date, trial date, then, I thought it was maybe a final trial conference date, rather than a week or two that my thought was maybe sometime in early June, because I imagine it'll be significant motions to eliminate, we'll have to address. That'll give us time in case anything has to be kind of followed up on prior to the trial. But I just wanted to bounce that off. Your thoughts, Callan?
I think that makes sense, Your Honor. I would ask that we keep the final pretrial dates at July 13th and the last minute issues come up, but I think it makes sense to have an earlier one as well.
Right? Yeah, so we'll keep the July 13th. It's kind of a true final trial conference we have. But we can pick a date sometime earlier in June, mainly to deal with motions to eliminate.
So council, looking at the week of first, what would be the 8th, and the 4th, 5th, 12th?
I'm sorry, the schedule is set a trial in federal court with Judge Saris. It's going to go 2 weeks on the 1st of June. So I'd say a week. Yep, that's fine.
How's that?
That's fine.
All right. So that'll be the final trial conference. Parties can have their motions to eliminate filed a week before. And we can address any of those at the time.
Does that work with you with your schedule?
If it doesn't, I'll call you at the beginning of the schedule.
Well,
Yeah, that works.
All right. And then
I'm sorry, Your Honor, you said a week before or 2 weeks before?
2 weeks, why don't we say 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
That's probably better for reach preparation.
No, she can't walk. Are you guys getting lag on the video or is it like on the video that we're watching right now? Yeah, she sent him on an errand. She did. She was hearing voices. Let me know if it gets better or if it's still the same. I don't see it on my end. No lag at all. Okay, so it might be like where you're at or YouTube, because I don't see it on my end either. There's so much to this case. She did send him on an errand. I don't think it was a premeditated thing. I think she was already going through, like, I think the episode had already started and she was hearing voices. She was heavily medicated, on and off drugs, different medications. And 코urtney Clenny was just recently in court, and that clip is ridiculous of her like laughing in court and stuff. And then you have Lindsay here, who's completely, you can tell she's still going through something, and there's a difference there.
The other thing is, on March 2nd, we're going to deal with those motions. Is it the defendant's request that she be brought in or by Zoom just for those quick hearings?
I'd like to have it here. And I have to, if I may, on that issue, I would actually, strangely enough, like to commend the Sheriff's Department and our staff in Duxbury that melded together incredibly and done just a marvelous job of transportation and supplies and taking care of our ancillary issues. So I just wanted to put that on record. Appreciate the help the court provided in that regard as well. I would like to have it here if I could.
So we'll see that. Kind of gives it kind of a short runway, so we'll try and get that done.
Okay.
If not, we can't get that done.
Not critical. I mean,
Yeah, we may have to have her on by Zoom.
that's fine.
That's all.
Understood.
The other thing in regards to that, I know the court had issued an order regarding the procedures, which is sealed because it mainly dealt with security issues. I also just kind of wanted to let counsel know, if it's in the order, if either side or any of the parties feel that order has to be amended or changed, just bring it to the court's attention.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I just ask, the March 2nd date and the June 18th date, are those at 2 p.m.? Or?
If we can, yeah. Does that work for you?
It does, I just wasn't sure if we wanted more time for motions than Monday.
Oh, June 18th?
Yes.
I think we should do in the morning or now. Right. I was thinking that's my, yeah, June 18th, because I don't know how long those are going to be, so we'll do that. And let me see, 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
With regards, other than that,
I believe I thought she was in a hospital right now while she's awaiting all this trial. Has it got better, the lagging and stuff? Let me know. She's currently in third. Okay, yeah, Jakey just answered. In her third year at Duxbury Mental Health Hospital. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. Is this also a recent case? It was January, it happened January 24th, 2023, but she has been going through mental health issues since then. I believe people can act seemingly normal while in a crisis. Yeah, and I truly believe the whole medication makes people act different combo. I like I'm telling you, I personally had an experience with this and it is wild. The meds she was on, half of them could cause psychosis, and she was already in a psychosis. Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna read the lawsuit that her husband just filed, and that lists a lot of the medical stuff going on.
anything else that we need to address for this call?
No, Your Honor.
Defendant?
I don't think so.
All right, so we'll be in recess on this matter until we say March 2nd. And at that point, we'll deal with those motions that have been filed, any other issues that we have to. We've got the trial date, the 2 final trial conferences, and then if there's any issues regarding discovery, especially under Rule 14.4, parties can bring it to my attention, we can deal with that.
Good.
All right?
Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll be recessed on this case. Thank you.
Thank you.
53-226, the appeal motion.
Truly so sad. After each pregnancy, it got worse. Let's move on to the lawsuit. Patrick Clancy individually as a personal representative of Cora, Dawson and Callan Clancy versus Astra Mental Health and South Shore Health System. For her husband to stand by her side through all of this is true love. Yeah, I did mention Andrea Yates at the beginning, Evie. Yeah, instead of helping her. Yeah, and then 𝗟𝗲𝗆𝗆 Fitzsimmons right now too. That's a case also out of Massachusetts. Interesting that they're both out of Mass as well. 𝗟𝗲𝗆 Fitzsimmons also was going through postpartum depression, and she doesn't have custody of her baby right now. So that's also another case I do have a playlist on. I think for her husband to be standing by her side is huge and will be huge in trial. That was the ex-cop, right? Yeah, it was. Okay. She had kept a strict diary. Yeah, she did. And we're going to go through all of that. I believe it was McLean Mental Hospital that she was a prior date. Yeah, she was asking for help. Absolutely. Yeah, she was on leave from work to get mental health help. And that's why her husband was working from home to like help take care of her and stuff and the kids. And this happened. It's terrible. Okay, let's read this. Complaint and jury demand January 20th, 2026. This is an action for wrongful death brought by Patrick, an individual and personal representative of the estate of his deceased children, Cora Marie Clancy, Dawson William Clancy, and Callan Patrick Clancy. Patrick's wife, Lindsay, is alleged to have unalived Cora, Dawson, and Callan. Prior to the alleged crimes, Lindsay sought medical treatment for her anxiety and increasingly poor and deteriorating mental health condition. As alleged herein, the treatment for her providers, Jennifer A. Tufts, Rebecca Jolata, Astra Mental Health, and South Shore Health System, collectively all defendants, exacerbated her mental health struggles. Indeed, the bevy of diverse and powerful medications they misprescribed, coupled with their abject failure to appropriately monitor Lindsay, resulted in Lindsay's mental health deteriorating to the point of suicidal ideation and requiring inpatient care. Ultimately, defendants' negligent treatment of Lindsay, including their complete failure to recognize and address the radical erosion of her mental health, resulted in tragedy, namely allegations that Lindsay took the lives of her children. If the defendants had not acted negligently and rather had provided adequate care, it is more likely than not that Patrick and Lindsay's children would still be alive today. Wow. Parties, we already went through that. Cora, Dawson, Callan. Plaintiff is Patrick, their dad, her husband. He was appointed personnel representative of the estates on December 3rd of 2025. Respectively, Patrick Clancy was at the time of the children's death a resident of Duxbury and in Plymouth County, Massachusetts. Jennifer Tufts is a psychiatrist registered to practice medicine in the Commonwealth of Mass. Defendant Rebecca Jolata is a certified nurse practitioner to practice medicine also in Mass. Astra Mental Health is a professional corporation with a principal place of business in Mass. Defendant South Shore Health System is a place of business also in Mass. The facts, the Clancy family. In January of 2023, Patrick and Lindsay were living in Duxbury, Massachusetts with their 3 children, Cora, Dawson, and Callan. Patrick and Lindsay had married in December of 2016 and settled in Duxbury. Patrick worked in telecommunications while Lindsay began her career as a nurse working at Mass General Hospital. She soon became a nurse in the Mass General Hospital Labor and Delivery Unit. Patrick and Lindsay had always intended to have children, and soon after getting married, they began to grow their family. They had their first baby, Cora, on December 24th, 2017, and their second baby, Dawson, on September 30th, 2019. Lindsay experienced some anxiety following the birth of each of her first two children, which worsened as she got closer to returning to work each time. She was able to overcome her anxiety both times, however, through exercise, a healthy diet, meditation, socializing, and following Dawson's birth, several therapy sessions. Patrick and Lindsay jumped into parenthood and worked together to provide the best possible environment to raise their children. In order to spend more time at home with her children, Lindsay began working part-time night shifts in the MGH, Labor and Delivery Unit Hospital. Or unit. MGH is the hospital, so that's what we'll call it from here. During her shifts, Lindsay remained attentive to her children and was known to monitor Cora and Dawson on baby monitors while they slept. Nonetheless, Lindsay's career remained important to her. She remained passionate about nursing and having a career that also allowed her the chance to get out of the house and interact with people. Lindsay became pregnant with the couple's third child several years later and gave birth to a baby boy, Callan, on May 26, 2022. Both Patrick and Lindsay took parental leave following Callan's birth, with Patrick's leave scheduled for 12 weeks and Lindsay's leave scheduled for 18 weeks. The family spent their leave together, visiting extended family, the local beach and pool, and enjoying time together at home. Lindsay repeatedly told Patrick how happy she was and how much she loved their new baby. Her actions echoed her voice sentiments. Lindsay appeared extremely happy. She was enthusiastic and energetic and returned to exercising, something that had always been important to her. Shortly after giving birth, Callan. Something that had always been important to her. Shortly after giving birth to Callan, Patrick and Lindsay ran two 5K road races, one in July and a second in September. Life was idyllic for the Clancys. Patrick's return to work and Lindsay's impeding return to work. I want to make sure I keep up on what you say. These cases are very sad. Kelsey's case, it's so sad. Yes, it is. We also cover that one here. I never had postpartum, so I can't imagine what these girls would have gone through. I've never had it either. But I have experienced like a mental health issue with medications and stuff, which I hope we can talk about maybe on a members only. I think she was clearly failed by the mental health care in MA. Now 3 babies are in heaven and a family broken forever. Had she expressed thoughts of hurting her children? I don't think so, but we'll find out. She was resenting the older kids and feeling guilty for not giving their new baby attention. Yeah, it's so sad. Let's continue. Patrick returned to work approximately 12 weeks after Callan was born, and while he was able to work from home, the first time Lindsay was challenged with taking care of their 3 children single-handedly during the weekdays. Lindsay was also faced with her own return to work at the end of September 2022. Previously, the period leading to the end of her parental leave had been a difficult time for Lindsay and had resulted in anxiety. Lindsay began to feel and experience stress and anxiety in September of 2022 toward the end of the maternity leave. Nonetheless, she continued to socialize with friends and continued to go to events and trips with her family. Because of her anxiety and impeding return to work, however, Lindsay decided to seek psychiatric treatment. Lindsay's medical treatment. To address her anxiety, Lindsay sought psychiatric care with Dr. Tufts from Astor. Dr. Tufts is a psychiatrist at Astor who, according to Astor's website, specializes in post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma-related disorders, mood disorders, anxiety, obsessive-compulsive disorder, ADHD, substance abuse, women's mental health, and perinatal and postpartum psychiatry. Lindsay decided to extend her maternity leave in the hopes of improving her mental health. Dr. Tufts treated Lindsay from on or about September 15th of 2022 through or on or about January 23rd of 2023. During that time, Dr. Tufts prescribed Lindsay a variety of different medications, but failed to monitor her reactions to those medications or attend to her worsening psychiatric condition. Lindsay's first appointment with Dr. Tufts was on September the 15th, 2022. That day, Dr. Tufts diagnosed Lindsay with chronic generalized anxiety disorder and chronic adjustment disorder with depressed mood. When Lindsay first began treatment, she was hesitant about taking prescription medications. Nonetheless, on September 15th, 2022, Dr. Tufts prescribed Lindsay sertraline, also known as Zoloft. Lindsay did not initially take the medication, but by October the 3rd of 2022, Lindsay told Dr. Tufts that she was on the verge of taking medication, but wants to try therapy first. Lindsay began taking the prescribed Zoloft by mid-October. 1 week after starting the medication and increasing the dose as prescribed. However, on October 20th of 2022, she reported to Dr. Tufts that she felt awful and was experiencing insomnia due to the medication increase. She did not want to eat and was feeling more depressed, was crying all day, experiencing mental fog, and was terrified to start something new. Indeed, she explained that her anxiety had gotten worse than it was before she began taking the medication. She felt it was difficult to differentiate between how she felt before taking the medication, experienced overnight racing thoughts, and was paranoid of getting suicidal thoughts, something bad happening, doesn't want to be alone, quote unquote. That's what she said. So she was paranoid of those thoughts. Wow. This reaction to a relatively low dose of the medication was atypical and should have prompted Dr. Tufts to assess why Lindsay reacted in this way. Among other things, she should have conducted testing of blood plasma levels of medication. Dr. Tufts failed to do so. This is so heartbreaking. Lindsay's condition deteriorated through the fall. Among other things, she experienced increasingly bad insomnia, anxiety, and depression. Instead of working to identify the source of Lindsay's condition, Dr. Tufts attempted to treat Lindsay's symptoms, adding medications to treat her anxiety and depression. By the end of October and into November of 2022, Lindsay was still hopeful about the future and about returning to her baseline. For example, on October 31st of 2022, Lindsay reported to her therapist, a colleague of Dr. Tufts, that she was hoping to return to work soon, which she hoped would decrease her depression symptoms. By mid-November, however, her insomnia had become so bad that she was sleeping approximately only 3 hours per night. Lindsay's insomnia became so severe that on November the 16th of 2022, she went to the emergency room for treatment. She was prescribed another medication, trazodone. However, it was not effective. An attempt to assist her daughter-in-law on November 20th, 2022, Patrick's mother, a nurse at South Shore Health, contacted Julie. She was a CNP of the Parental Behavioral Health Program of South Shore Health and asked her to reach out to Lindsay. Nurse Paul did so, and Lindsay reported that the trazodone she had been prescribed had not been effective in helping her sleep, even when taking a 150 milligram dosage. That's a big dosage for trazodone, I feel like. Trazodone, I didn't love that stuff. Hurts your heart. I know there are evil women who hurt kids intentionally, but this is accidental in my eyes. I agree with you, Evie. I think this is not the case of being evil. I truly think this was truly her mental health declining. I know, and a lack of proper mental health diagnosis. It's true. I agree with that. She's in the hospital now, but she should have been there before the tragedy happened. I agree. I had postpartum with my second daughter and was really awful being detached, zero emotions. Yeah. I haven't had kids, but I have gone through mental health stuff. So I'm very personally experienced in these meds and what it's like to actually go through something through like psychosis. I think the Seroquel is what got her into psychosis. Let's continue. Lindsay reported that she was, quote unquote, very frustrated and scared and afraid of being on medication long term. She told Nurse Paul that she was feeling very overwhelmed, started having racing thoughts, constantly thinking, experiencing extreme insomnia, averaging 3 hours per night, very frustrated and scared, were her exact words. On November 21st, 2022, Nurse Paul prescribed Lindsay fluoxetine, also known as Prozac, 10 milligram. Lindsay was describing symptoms suggesting mania, such as racing thoughts, extreme insomnia, frustration, and feeling scared. At this point, again, lab work should have been performed in order to ensure that Lindsay was metabolizing the medication she was being prescribed at a normal rate. However, no lab work was done. 2 days later, Lindsay reported to Nurse Paul that she was feeling disconnected and out of it today, feeling a bit spacey. This happened a few times in the last couple months. Shortly afterwards, on November 25th, 2022, Nurse Paul prescribed Lindsay 3 different medications, 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆, which is also known as Ambien, mirtazapine, also known as Remeron, and clonazepam, also known as Klonopin. The insomnia will F you up alone. Yes, it will. She will never recover. I know. It's a long road to walk. This is a lot. Ambien. If you don't know, I used to work for Big Pharma, so I'm super familiar with all of these. The medication did not help Lindsay. On November 28th, 2022, Lindsay reported to Nurse Paul that she was continuing to struggle with sleep, still feels disoriented, forgetful, not connected to her body. When she wakes up, she is feeling hungover, petrified that she is becoming addicted to benzos, and feels like she is in a panic state right now. All her exact words. The next day, on November 29th, 2022, Lindsay began treating with Nurse Paul colleague, Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆𝗆. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆 is a certified nurse practitioner within South Shore Health Perinatal Behavior Health Program. That day, Lindsay told the nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆 that she was getting physically dependent on benzos in order to sleep. She further reported feeling completely overwhelmed, that her mind is constantly running. She also reported feeling afraid, as if something awful might happen. Several days in the past 2 weeks. On November 30th, 2022, Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆 prescribed Lindsay quetiapine, also known as Seroquel, for the first time. Lindsay quickly reported the negative impact this medication had on her mental health. She told Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆 South Shore Health Perinatal Behavior Health Program coworker, Letitia Dukes, with whom she began receiving therapy, that she had an addiction to Ativan and that is why she can't sleep. She reported weight loss, a lack of appetite, panic attacks, and a feeling of numbness. She also reported for the first time that she had ideation, unaliving herself ideation. On or about December 5th of 2022, Lindsay reported to Ms. Dukes that she had experienced intrusive thoughts of wanting to die and had contacted Aspire Crisis Support, an emergency service for those at risk of self-harm, over the weekend. Patrick joined the visit with Nurse Paul and reported to her that Lindsay's anxiety had become significantly worse since starting psych medications. The following day, Lindsay attended an appointment with Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆. During this appointment, Lindsay reported that she was sleeping only about 3 hours per night, felt completely overwhelmed, and that her mind was constantly running. The symptoms presented by Lindsay caused Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆 to ask her if she was having thoughts of harming herself or her children. Lindsay denied having such thoughts, but again reported, however, quote unquote, feeling afraid as if something awful might happen almost every day. Lindsay also reported that she believed that her ongoing symptoms were connected to the medication she was being prescribed, and that immediately after being prescribed a stronger dose of Zoloft, she did not sleep for 48 hours and was not tired. I'm like screaming in my head right now. This is wild. I didn't know to what level this was at. That's a lot of meds. She wasn't sleeping. She was literally out of her mind. In response, Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗹𝗆 prescribed an additional medication to Lindsay, diazepam, which is also known as Valium. Hold up. I'm screaming. She was on Ativan, which is lorazepam. She's on Ambien, mirtazapine, clonazepam, which is also in the same class as the lorazepam, 150 milligram of trazodone. Then they put her on Seroquel. Then they freaking put her on Valium. So she's on 3 freaking in the same class. No wonder she lost her mind. This is a plethora of medications. And they're right. They did fail her. They should have been monitoring her. I'm shocked. I'm really shocked. From personal experience, when I did need lorazepam, Ativan, my doctors, like, they were monitoring me to a T because that's how dangerous they can be. Depending on whether you need them long-term or not, which they're not recommended, and then whatever you're taking them with and whatever's going on. Every situation is different. But that's a lot of meds to mix. On December the 9th, Patrick called Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆's office, asked for a callback, and made clear. So wait, I want to make sure I remember this because as we cover the case. So I said zolpidem, Ambien, Zoloft, clonazepam, trazodone, Seroquel, lorazepam. What else did we say? Did I put Valium? Oh yeah, Valium. What else did we say? Clonazepam, mirtazapine. Wow. Oh, and Ambien. Already got that one. $150 milligram. Did I get trazodone? Yeah, I did. Okay. On December 9th, 2022, Patrick called Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆's office asked for a callback and made clear to the office that it was fairly urgent. When Patrick and Lindsay spoke to the nurse, 𝗠𝗲𝗆, they advised her that Lindsay was still experiencing panic and ideation. Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆 advised Lindsay to continue taking the medication as she had prescribed. Lindsay continued to experience ideation throughout December. She continued to seek help through Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆, her therapist, and in mid-December, the emergency department at Mass General Hospital. During this time period, Lindsay reported having persistent thoughts of unaliving herself. She also reached out to Dr. Tufts, who prescribed her an additional medication known as lamotrigine, which is Lamictal. Yo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 meds. And some of the most powerful ones. I'm shook. Further seeking help on December 20th of 2022, Lindsay admitted herself into a day hospital program at Women and Infants Hospital intended for patients with postpartum depression. While at the Women and Infants Hospital, Lindsay reported that she started having passive ideation immediately after starting the Seroquel that was prescribed by Nurse 𝗠𝗲𝗆 on November the 30th of 2022. At the Women and Infants Hospital, Lindsay reported, among other things, heart palpitations, severe depression, a feeling of numbness, and feeling that her life was becoming a disaster, and that she could not feel fear, and that she was worried that she was messed up beyond repair. She also reported a general inability to function. Women and Infants Hospital determined that Lindsay's mental health issues were likely due to overmedication and misdiagnosis, and that its day program was therefore not appropriate for her. Wow. That is wow. So they stopped treating her because of her other doctors. Women's and Infants Hospital reached out to Nurse Gelada to discuss Lindsay's care, but Nurse Gelada failed to respond to them. They thought she was over-medicated and misdiagnosed. Lindsay's condition continued to deteriorate, and on January 1st of 2023, Lindsay admitted herself to McLean Hospital as a result of ideation. She remained there until January 5th of 2023. So right before the crime. Lindsay returned to treatment with Dr. Tufts the following day on January 6th of 2023. Dr. Tufts diagnosed Lindsay with chronic major depressive disorder, single episode moderate. She recorded that Lindsay's psychiatric condition was deteriorating and that her medication was not effective. Despite her poor condition, Dr. Tufts met with Lindsay for only 17 minutes. Dr. Tufts met with Lindsay for another 17 minutes 3 days later. On or about January 12th of 2023, Lindsay reported to Dr. Tufts that she was still feeling a very low mood and no motivation and just very depressed. This has been going on for months now, and I'm getting desperate for something that would work to quickly get me out of this depressed state. She was desperate 13 days before. Four days later, during another 17-minute visit on January 16th of 2023, Dr. Tufts reported Lindsay's mood to be depressed and her affect depressed and flat, writing that Lindsay's mood is still very low, no motivation, numb, able to force self out of bed, take care of basics eating. Concentration is fine. Caring for baby bonding feels forced. No ideation. Lindsay had a final appointment with Dr. Tufts on January 23rd, the day before this happened. During that 17-minute appointment, Lindsay reported that she was a little more anxious and her heart was racing and that she was noticing more morning anxiety. Dr. Tufts recorded that Lindsay's mood was the same, flat, anxious, that Lindsay has no motivation and is numb, and that she has to force herself up out of the house. Lindsay's sleep and medication efficiency were poor, and her insight was poor, and her psychiatric condition generally was unchanged. I'm so upset for her. They dragged her up constantly and then they just stopped it all. How can anyone take all of them? That's crazy. Yeah, the day before. They should have admitted her instead of over-prescribing. January 24th, 2023, the day of the crimes. Lindsay has been accused of killing Cora, Dawson, and Callan while Patrick was briefly out of the family home on the evening of January 24th of 2023. Cora and Dawson died that same day, and Callan succumbed to his injuries and died on January 27th, 2023. According to medical records, Lindsay did so because she started hearing a compelling and unrecognizable singular male voice that told her, quote unquote, this is your last chance, and that she had to, quote unquote, take them with her. It finally just, wow. She also reported that the voice indicated to her that she should die, that this is her last chance, and that her children would suffer if she was gone. Lindsay then cut her wrist and neck and jumped out of the second floor window in her home. She fell approximately 20 feet to the ground below and suffered traumatic spinal cord injuries. She is now paralyzed below the sternum. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada's treatment of Lindsay fell below the standard of care. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada, and through their employers, Astor and South Shore Health, were aware that Lindsay was experiencing ideation and critically deteriorating psychiatric condition while in their care and failed to take reasonable steps to properly treat her. The standard of care required Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada to take reasonable steps to appreciate the full extent of Lindsay's psychiatric condition so that they could provide adequate treatment to her. This required them to, among other things, meet Lindsay for appointments in person so that they could adequately assess her behavior in its totality. Often, a patient is unable to voice her condition or fully describe her mental state. Under such circumstances, it is crucial to assess the patient's body language to more accurately assess the patient's condition. It is also important for a psychiatric prescriber to explore the patient's reported symptom and ask follow-up questions to fully assess the patient for signs of concern, particularly because patients do not always know what is important to report. The standard of care requires that psychiatric prescribers fully document these assessments in their notes, both for themselves and to communicate this information to other members of the care team. Further, the standard of care requires a prescriber to meet with the patient frequently enough and for long enough time to continuously assess the patient's condition, particularly where the patient is prescribed medication and has an adverse reaction to or a negative side effect of the medication, to the medication. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada regularly met with Lindsay via video conference rather than assessing her in person. Doing so provided them with an incomplete picture of Lindsay's condition, as they did not have the ability to fully assess Lindsay's body language. Moreover, the visits were too short to fully assess Lindsay's condition. Indeed, in the weeks before January 24th, 2024, Dr. Tufts' appointments with Lindsay were only 17 minutes long, despite her acknowledging that Lindsay's mood was depressed and that her affect was depressed and flat. These appointments were particularly inadequate where Lindsay had experienced a deteriorating condition since at least October of 2022 and had reported experiencing passive ideation since starting Seroquel in early December of 2022 and was hospitalized at McLean Hospital for ideation in January of 2023. So she was just suffering for a year going through this. For over a year, right? Because she started October of 2022. Wow. The standard of care also required Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada to assess and monitor a patient who had an unusual, unexpected, or unfavorable reaction to medication, such as side effects or a lack of response. A simple way to do so was to order blood plasma levels of medication in order to determine whether the patient was a slow metabolizer and thus more drastically impacted by a medication than she otherwise would be, or on the contrary, whether the medication simply was not working, either indicating that the patient might need a higher dose for it to be effective, or that the patient might have an underlying medical condition that needed to be treated. The standard of care required Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada to look at the lab results in conjunction with the patient's symptoms in order to properly assess her condition. Indeed, the standard of care is to start low and go slow, meaning to begin a medication at a minimal level and slowly increase the dosage over time to allow the provider to better assess the impact of the drug upon the patient. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada failed to do so, despite having immediate adverse side effects as a result of the medications that she was prescribed. Neither Dr. Tufts nor Nurse Gelada ever conducted any testing, including blood plasma levels of medication, to determine why Lindsay was having an adverse reaction, including too early low dosage of medications prescribed to her. Instead, both Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata added and accelerated medications in an ad hoc manner that did not follow the quote unquote start slow and go slow principle, radically increasing the risk to Lindsay without ever taking the necessary steps to determine the cause of the adverse reactions, much less acknowledge the severity of the adverse reactions she was experiencing. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata's inaction, including their failure to conduct testing to determine whether the medications they were prescribing to Lindsay and the frequency and in dosage in which they were prescribing them fell below the standard of care and caused Lindsay's symptoms to worsen. The standard of care also required Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata to coordinate care between and amongst themselves and other providers. A patient is often seen by multiple clinicians, and it is vital that all treating clinicians are aware of what treatment the other is providing so that they can effectively work together to treat the patient. Here, Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata were a part of a treatment team that, among other things, included themselves, Lindsay's therapist, and the hospitals that she visited and was admitted to. Among other things, Lindsay and Patrick reported to certain of these providers, for example, Miss Dukes, their concerns regarding the prescriptions that Lindsay had been given. Yet there is no indication in her medical records that Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata ever coordinated her care and treatment. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata's failure to coordinate Lindsay's care with other providers amounted to a breach of the standard of care. Yeah, how she ended up on this many meds is absolutely insane. They should be held equally responsible. I'm so sad and angry at the same time. She was a victim of malpractice. I know. They didn't even care about her, only the money. I'm like screaming. So I wonder, like, this will obviously affect the criminal trial, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm shocked. Okay, let's continue. Given Lindsay's documented deteriorating condition, the standard of care required Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata to seek more information regarding Lindsay's condition, including from those around her every day, specifically her family members. Lindsay was a primary caregiver for her 3 children, all 5 years of age and under. Nonetheless, Lindsay reported being unable to function on a daily basis and reported that she was sleeping only a few hours a night, which can result in psychosis alone. Despite the clear warning symptoms, Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata failed to reach out to the individuals with whom Lindsay interacted on a daily basis in order to gain further information regarding her condition and the severity of her condition. This information would have been crucial in understanding the full nature of Lindsay's condition, particularly where Lindsay herself repeatedly told Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata that the medications were not effective and that she was experiencing suicidal ideation. Finally, the standard of care required Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata to understand and appreciate the risk that Lindsay would hurt not only herself, but her children. As prescribers who specialized in perinatal and postpartum mental health issues, the standard of care required Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata to be aware of and understand current studies and developments in their field. It is well known that there is a risk that a patient suffering from mental health disorders following pregnancy pose a risk of injuring or even unaliving either themselves and or their children. Lindsay's condition was serious and deteriorating. She reported that she was feeling afraid as if something awful might happen regularly and that caring for her baby bonding feels forced. Nurse Jalata recognized the risk and asked Lindsay multiple times if she had any intent to harm her children. Lindsay's statements, general condition, and symptoms demonstrated that her children were at risk if Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata failed to properly treat her. Defendants knew or should have known that she presented a real, clear, and present danger to harm herself and her young children. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Jalata, who were charged with Lindsay's care and despite clear warnings, failed to take appropriate action consistent with the standard of care and in failing to do so, more likely than not, directly and proximately caused Lindsay to take the lives of her children on January 4th, 2023, as is alleged. Indeed, it is more likely than not that Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada met the standard of care, they would have appreciated the severity of Lindsay's mental health condition. Further, it is more likely than not, had Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada appreciated the severity nature of Lindsay's mental health condition, they would have altered their treatment plans to properly treat Lindsay, and more likely than not, Lindsay would not have harmed or killed Cora, Dawson, and Callan, as is alleged. Dr. Tufts and Nurse Gelada's failure to comply with the standard of care more likely than not resulted in the deaths of Clancy's 3 children. Count 1, wrongful death. I'm not going to read all of this. It just says all defendants owed Lindsay, Cora, Dawson, and Callan a duty to exercise reasonable skill and attention in their care and treatment of Lindsay. Defendants failed to exercise reasonable skill and attention in caring for Lindsay. Defendants' conduct deviated from accepted standards of medical practice. As a direct and proximate result of the negligence of defendants, Cora, Dawson, and Callan are dead. Further, the acts and omissions of defendants also constituted gross negligence and a reckless indifference to health, safety, and welfare of Lindsay and her children, showed reckless disregard for the consequences which defendants knew or should have known could result from the acts or omissions. Cora, Dawson, and Callan are survived by their father, Patrick, who has suffered damages as a result of their death, including without limitation, services, protection, care, assistance, society, companionship, comfort, guidance, counsel, advice, and consortium. Patrick had also incurred funeral and burial expenses and other damages as a result of Cora, Dawson, and Callan's deaths. Count 2, conscience, pain, and suffering. Count 3, violations of the health insurance portability and accountability. HIPAA. I'm going to read this part because it's important. On January 15th, 2026, South Shore Health disclosed to plaintiff that on November 17th, 2025, it had discovered that a South Shore Health employee had inappropriately accessed Patrick, Cora, Dawson, and Callan's medical records. Wow. So they accessed their records as this case is going on. South Shore Health employee inappropriate access of Patrick's and children's medical records amounts to a violation of HIPAA. As a direct and proximate result of HIPAA, South Shore Health caused plaintiff damages and an amount to be determined at trial. The plaintiff demands a trial by jury. Respectfully submitted, Patrick Clancy and all of his attorneys. He has 1, 2, 3. Howard Cooper, Maria Davis, and Megan Hugan of Todd and Weld LLP, dated January 20th, 2026. This is just a lawsuit, but I have all of the search warrants and the big lawsuit, which we're going to definitely get into this week. This is absolutely wild, and I'm glad we're deep diving this before it goes to trial. Ambient with Chazano, it's a wonder she couldn't sleep. Never mind, how could she walk? I'm shocked. Like, I'm really glad we read that before we get into anything else, because that's very important. I would be surprised if they did forgery. Jury needs to see how we see it. Absolutely. Hey, Cree. I absolutely agree. My heart hurts beyond words. I know. I'll never be the same. Nope. So we did the lawsuit. Let's read. The other document I have is 800 pages. So we're not going to start it tonight, but we're going to start it tomorrow. I want to watch the arraignment from last time. So by last time, I mean the very first one that happened 3 years ago when she was still in the hospital. So we watched the arraignment, the recent one from this week. We read the lawsuit that was just recently filed, and then we're going to watch the first arraignment, and then we'll get into the search warrants, and we'll get into which is also a big document, and then we'll get into the big document. I want to go through all of it before she goes to trial, or whatever happens, I guess.
Ms. Clancy, on docket 2359 CR 153, the court has a complaint charging you under 265 section 1, count 1 murder, juvenile 1, count 2, 265 section 1 murder, juvenile 2, count 3, 265 15D big A, strangulation or suffocation, juvenile 1, count 4, 265 15D big A, strangulation, suffocation, juvenile 2, count 5, 265 15D big A, strangulation or suffocation, juvenile 3, count 6, 265 15A big A, assault and battery, dangerous weapon, two-way exercise rope, juvenile 1, count 7, assault and battery, 265 15A with a dangerous weapon, two-wit exercise rope, juvenile 2, and count 8, 265 15A, assault and battery, dangerous weapon, exercise rope, two-wit, juvenile 3. Man, a plea of not guilty will be entered. Please be advised while this case is pending, any violation of state, federal, or local law may result in bail being revoked and be held without bail.
Commonwealth, I'll hear from you first.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Commonwealth is requesting that the defendant be held without bail based on the facts of the case, the strength of the Commonwealth's case, and the potential penalty. On Friday, January 27th, 2023, using an erasable whiteboard because she was still temporarily intubated, one of the first questions that Lindsay Clancy asked was, "Do I need an attorney?" She knew that she had murdered her children, and she had the clarity, focus, and mental acumen to focus on protecting her own rights and interests. The following is a summary of the events that led to the murders of Cora Clancy, Dawson Clancy, and Callan Clancy. On the morning of Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, the defendant took her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, to the pediatrician's for an appointment. She interacted with a receptionist, nursing staff, and a doctor. There were apparently no issues with the defendant's demeanor or behavior as she completed the appointment and was allowed to leave with Cora without any issues or concerns. When she returned home, she went outside with Cora and her 3-year-old son, Dawson, to play in the snow. They built a snowman. The defendant sent photos to her mother and to the defendant, to her husband. She texted with them. Nothing in the text was out of the ordinary or any sign of any distress or trouble. Back inside later that day at 4:02 p.m., the defendant searched on her phone kids' Miralax. She then searched that takeout 3V via her cell phone at 4:13 p.m. Immediately after doing that, she used Apple Maps on her phone to determine how long it would take someone to drive from her home in Duxbury to 3V restaurant in Plymouth. So she would know how long someone would be gone if they ran that errand. She next went on the CVS website at 4:47 p.m. and then called CVS on Summer Street in Kingston. She spoke to the manager of CVS and asked if they had the kids' Miralax. The manager told her no, but they had other similar medications. According to the manager of CVS, her voice did not sound slurred or impaired in any way. She had no trouble understanding the defendant, and it was a perfectly normal conversation. At 4:53 p.m., the defendant texted her husband, who was working in his home office in their basement. She texted, "Any chance you want to do takeout from 3V? I didn't cook anything. It's been a long day." This was an unusual request, as when the family ordered takeout, they usually go somewhere closer to home, but it was a place that they had been in the past. Patrick Clancy texted back yes, and then the defendant asked him to check the menu. At 5:06 p.m., the husband texted the defendant asking what she was going to get. She responded, "A Mediterranean power bowl." She spelled it correctly, and it was something that was on the menu. He then told her that he wanted the scallop and pork belly risotto. At 5:10 p.m., the defendant called 3V Restaurant to place the order. She got the order correct. She gave the correct name for pickup, Patrick. The hostess who took the call said there was nothing out of the ordinary about this call. She was able to understand the defendant, that her voice was not slurred or impaired in any way.
Evie, you asked, do we know how long from this day to when she was with somewhat coherent to respond with the whiteboard to make it look like she's I don't even think she's fully there like here at this hearing. Let me see how long it was. Let me look. I don't know. I assume, what's the date on this video? I guess that would help, right? February 7th, 2023. Yeah, so this happened on January 24th.
5:15 p.m., Patrick Clancy headed out the door to run these errands at the defendant's request. As he left, she texted him Pedialyte liquid stool softener. Surveillance footage shows Mr. Clancy at CVS on Summer.
She's not even mentally well here yet either. I think that's so unfair.
At 5:32
I think that's an
p.m.
injustice.
He goes to the medication aisle, the children's medication aisle. Phone records show that he called the defendant at 5:33 p.m. and she did not answer the phone. She then calls him back at 5:34 p.m. and the call lasted 14 seconds. He's there at the store unsure of which medication to get, and she tells him exactly what she wants. He had no issues communicating with her. It was a completely normal call, although he did mention that she seemed like she was in the middle of something. He is on surveillance footage during this time, exiting that aisle and appeared to be using his phone. He then heads to the register, makes his purchase, and leaves the store at 5:37 p.m. He's next seen on footage at 3V restaurant at 5:54 p.m. He picks up the food and he's out of there within a minute. When he arrives home, the first thing he noticed was the silence. He did not see or hear the defendant or the children. He actually called her cell phone at 6:09 p.m. looking for them, and she did not answer. He went to their bedroom on the second floor and the door was locked. He was able to open it, and when he looked inside, he saw blood on the floor in front of a full-length mirror and the window open. He immediately runs downstairs and into the backyard where he finds the defendant laying on the ground. She appeared to have cuts on her wrists and neck, but he stated to 911 that those wounds were no longer bleeding. She was conscious. He called 911. During this time, he asked the defendant, "What did you do?" She responded to him, "I tried to kill myself and jumped out the window." During the 911 call, Patrick can be heard asking the defendant.
I honestly don't even think she picked that restaurant because it was far. I really don't. I think they just were doing whatever, and she was already going through the episode, so I don't think she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna pick a place that's really far." Yeah, exactly, Augie. She was psychotic, not drunk to slur her words.
"Where are the kids?" He later told police that she replied, "In the basement." So immediately after this happened, she knew what she had done and she knew where the kids were. When EMS arrived, he asked them to stay with her so he could go find his kids. The 911 call kept going. Patrick can be heard on the 911 call entering the home and heading to the basement. At one point, he calls out, "Guys." He can then be heard screaming in agony and shock as he found his children. His screams seem to get louder and more agonized as the time passes. Cora and Callan were on the floor in the den area of the finished basement, which is to the left when you walk down the stairs, while Dawson was alone on the floor in his father's home office, which is to the right when you go down the stairs. Each child still had the exercise band that was used to strangle them tied around their necks when their father found them. Dawson and Callan were face down on the floor. Cora was on her side with her torso turned towards the floor. He removed the bands and begged them to breathe. He continued to scream uncontrollably and screamed for officers to come to the basement. The dispatchers are hearing this and they send help down to the basement. And when they encounter Patrick, he yells out, "She killed the kids." The police rushed the children to ambulances that brought them to the hospital, and unfortunately, Cora and Dawson were declared dead at the hospital. Callan was med-flighted to Boston Children's Hospital. Medical staff was able to restart his pulse, but not his brain activity. He was placed on life support for several days before passing away.
This is
The defendant was
horrible.
transported to South Shore Hospital and then to a Boston area hospital where she remains. She sustained several broken bones in her back and her rib cage. The police were able to find several notebooks in the defendant's home pursuant to a search warrant, and also notes on her phone that were similar to journal entries. In the months, weeks, and days preceding January 24th, 2023, the defendant meticulously detailed her daily activities, her children's lives, her mental state, and her medication use. Her writing was clear, precise, and articulate. She never indicated that she was hallucinating, delusional, or had disordered thoughts or speech. In all of her writing, she appears to know who she is, where she is, the date, and with whom she's interacted. She wrote a note on her phone the day before killing the children, stating that she had, quote, a touch of postpartum anxiety, end quote, around returning to work. She wrote that her psychiatrist had prescribed medication to help her. The defendant was initially diagnosed, according to her husband, with generalized anxiety disorder. She was then evaluated at the Women and Infant Center for Women's Behavioral Health in Providence, Rhode Island on December 20th, 2022. There, after an evaluation, she was told in the presence of her husband that by psychiatrists that she did not have postpartum depression and that she had no symptoms of postpartum depression. She wrote in her journal that at times she had suicidal ideation in December of 2022, and she also told her husband that she had suicidal thoughts and on one occasion had thoughts of harming her children. But she did not write or voice those thoughts after a stay at McLean Hospital. When she had those thoughts, she consulted with a psychiatrist and with her husband, and then she committed herself to McLean Hospital on January 1st, 2023. She was discharged by the hospital on January 5th, 2023. And the hospital did not file any paperwork at that time attempting to have her committed as a danger to herself or others.
Because they failed her. This is ridiculous.
She also kept meticulous
Wow.
and detailed daily medication logs in a diary that she wrote. She detailed that she had difficulties with each of the medications that were prescribed to her. And when she had issues with those medications, she detailed how her doctor had her stop that medication or wean off of it and then try something else. They were trying different medications to see what would work for her, what would benefit her. According to her husband, she was never on more than 4 to 5 medications at one time. And at the time of the murder, she was taking only 3 medications. And he said to the police that she always took the medications as prescribed.
That's interesting because we went through the new lawsuit that was filed in 2026 and she was on way more than that. So I'm curious about that
After her
part.
stay at McLean, the defendant appeared to be getting better, according to her husband. She slept well, interacted with friends and family. She went out with her kids and husband to places like the Kingsbury Club in Duxbury, the Charlie Horse Restaurant, the Museum of Science in Boston, the Cape Codder down the Cape, interacting with her family and the public without any apparent difficulties. She even stayed alone with the children on several occasions without any issues in January of 2023. Her husband asked her in mid-January, "Are you still having suicidal thoughts?" And she said no. The defendant's parents visited the family the weekend of January 21st, 2023. They interacted with the defendant in person. The defendant was able to run errands while her mom watched the children. She texted back and forth with her mother.
They can't be saying without all of this without knowing what happened with her, with everything we just basically read in the lawsuit. Like, how are they going to say she's guilty when she didn't even know who she was? And she tried to get help. They seemed so normal. Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people struggling to find it find it hard to divulge that information.
And there was nothing out of the ordinary about these text messages. In fact, the defendant texted her mother on January 22nd, 2023 to ask how her ride home went. During this conversation, the defendant's mother wrote, quote, "Enjoyed seeing everyone this weekend. Nice to see you doing better," end quote. On the night of the killings, Patrick Clancy was interviewed by the police at Beth Israel Deaconess Plymouth Hospital. He told the police that the defendant was having one of her best days. She was smiling and happy, and there was no indication that she was going to harm the kids. No one at all described her as acting like a zombie in the days leading up to the murder or on the day of the murders themselves.
Who said you have to act like be like a zombie? What?
On February 5th, 2020.
Someone get this lady, please, before we have a problem.
While sitting with Dr. 𝗶𝗶𝗆𝗆, the psychologist hired by defense counsel to evaluate her mental state, the defendant used Dr. 𝗶𝗆𝗆's cell phone to call her husband. She left a voicemail stating that she loved him. Yesterday, on February 6, 2023, at 10:09 a.m., she again used Dr. 𝗶𝗆𝗆's cell phone to call her husband. This time he answered, and during this call, the defendant stated that after he left the house that night, she killed the kids because she heard a voice and had, quote, a moment of psychosis, end quote. He asked her what voices she heard, and she said she heard a man's voice telling her to kill the kids and kill herself because it was her last chance. Patrick Clancy told the police the defendant had never heard voices before. He also told the police the defendant had never used the word psychosis to him before. The first time she used that word psychosis was when she was with the doctor hired by defense counsel and using his cell phone. The defendant actually wrote a note on her phone on October 25th, approximately 3 months before this happened, October 25th, 2022. She wrote, quote, "I think I sort of resent my other children because they prevent me from treating Cal like my first baby. And I know that's
yeah, that note right there is a sign of postpartum depression. It's not what her medical paperwork said. She was very sick, and yeah. Maybe you should just try to be strong. And it's normal to have like a day that you're fine and somewhat okay and then not be okay. Before I had my mental health breakdown, I was fine the days prior. It was really weird. These voices are very real for some people. They are, Q. They are. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
not fair to them. I know that. I was feeling so depressed last evening when Cora and
sucks.
Dawson came home from school. I know it runs off on them, so we had a pretty rough evening. I want to feel love and connection with all of my kids. She then wrote that she wants to have more kids eventually. The children were killed by ligature strangulation. Ligature strangulation causes the victim to become unconscious anywhere from 10 seconds up to a minute. The more the victim struggles, the longer it takes.
It's like when you're having mental health issues, not every day looks the same. Like every day is different, you know?
After the victim is unconscious, the ligature must be held in place with force, squeezing the neck for up to an additional 4 to 5 minutes to cause death. Therefore, she had to strangle each of them to unconsciousness and then make sure the bands were squeezing their little necks for several minutes. She could have changed her mind at any point during that time and removed those bands from their necks, and she did not. The defendant did not take advantage of the situation when her husband left the home that night. She created the situation, and she used Apple Maps to make sure she would have enough time to strangle each child before her husband returned from where she had sent him. The defendant is a danger to herself and others. She planned these murders, gave herself the time and privacy needed to commit the murders, and then she strangled each child in the place where they should have felt the safest, at home with their mom. She did so with deliberate premeditation and extreme atrocity and cruelty. And to supplement what the defense counsel's provided, I have a statement of their liability to file with the court. And thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Attorney Reddington.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Your Honor, my request is that the court not enter what I would suggest is an inhumane order, ordering this woman to be incarcerated. We all know, as people that work in the system, that jails and prisons are woefully deficient in medical care of the most basic type. We all know that this is an individual, as Your Honor knows from Dr. 𝗶𝗆𝗆𝗆's letter, who is in dire medical condition. We all know that this woman is, as counsel concedes apparently, a danger to herself.
If she was like fine, she wouldn't still be getting mental health treatment. It's been 3 years. And she's still getting it. She still very much thinks about unaliving herself.
I question whether she would ever make it to a trial. She's suicidal. She's extremely emotional. However, she's unable and has been unable to express any happiness or sadness or cry. And in fact, sometime about a month or two ago, she made the comment, "I just wish that I could feel something." Now, our society fails miserably in treating women with postpartum depression or even postpartum psychosis. It's medicate, medicate, medicate. Throw the pills at you and then see how it works. If it doesn't work, increase the dose.
Some women don't even get that help. Like, the best day says it all to me, highest highs leads to the deepest low. That's actually so true, Janie. The hospital failed her. She should have been placed in a facility. Agreed.
Or decrease the dose. Then end up trying another combination of medications. We're talking a relatively short period
I'm
of
so
time.
pissed about
When
this.
that baby was born in October, up until January, when this incident occurred, Your Honor, that she was on such significant dosage of medication. Your Honor knows that Cora was born in 2017. It was a very uneventful, normal pregnancy and delivery. No issues afterwards as far as anxiety. Dawson was born in 2018. Again, it was a normal birth. She had no significant issues as far as anxiety. She did have to have stitches and she was sore, and that was about it. Then, of course, Callan was born. When Callan was born, she ended up becoming depressed, suffered from significant anxiety, as a result of which she consulted with a number of doctors. A number of doctors indicated that she would be able to sleep, she would be able to feel, she would be able to emote once these medications kicked in. And again, as I say, our medical in our society completely abandons women with this condition.
Yep.
It's easy to say, come on, you have a healthy baby. You have a wonderful husband. You're able to take care of your kids in your home. You're lucky. Take the pills, you'll be okay. Well, they put her on a number of medications. They put her on Prozac, which Your Honor is well aware, is known as SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Your Honor knows that along with some of these medications, they have the black box warning from the FDA, may cause suicidal ideation, may cause homicidal ideation. She was on Ativan. She was on Benadryl. And then she ended up being told, okay, because she was complaining about the effects of the Prozac, they said, stop the Prozac, we'll find something else. They put her on Remeron. Then they added on Seroquel. And Your Honor, I attached from David Benjamin, the toxicologist, some papers with the submission. And Your Honor can see the side effects that this Seroquel causes. She was having bad thoughts. She was having worsening depression. Her husband suffered through that phase. Her parents were well aware of the fact that she was suffering from this depression and depressive phase. She wasn't sleeping. She ended up at some point, Your Honor, December 31st, she was on Seroquel. They told her then the Valium would be stopped. She was a shell of herself, no personality, and went to the doctor again. The doctor again prescribes the Seroquel, and then they took her off the Seroquel. And then she went to the doctor, and at that point, they prescribed trazodone, Ativan, amitriptyline, right up to the very end, when she was so bad that she voluntarily turned herself in, if you will, to the McLean Hospital. We know that that's a psychiatric hospital. She was at the McLean Hospital for a period of about 5 days. While at the McLean Hospital, they basically tried to get her off the Seroquel. She wanted to get off the benzodiazepines. She felt that she was being addicted to the benzodiazepines. She then ends up on trazodone, Ativan. Her mood was terrible after she got out of McLean Hospital. She still had the suicidal thoughts. As the government has indicated, she even told her husband that she had suicidal thoughts. You think this is something that she's planning to kill these 3 kids? by going and getting a menu, going onto Google Maps or whatever it is, and finding out the distance? When she tells her husband she's having suicidal thoughts, probably a month prior, thoughts of hurting her children, they go to the doctor again, and she's on the medications, on and off, on and off. This is a significant issue between the postpartum depression as well as possibility of postpartum psychosis that is pretty much ignored. But nevertheless, with the overlay of the SSRIs and the history, and Your Honor has some emails and things that people would reach out to me from all over the world, indicating that their daughter had the same problem, that they had the same problem. Your Honor is well aware that many times when people are on Prozac or on SSRIs, workplace violence, homicides, family homicides. This is clearly a tragic, which is a word that's used too much in the criminal justice system, but this really is a tragedy in this case. So we have, obviously,
Yeah.
I would suggest, a very good defense for this young woman. She's 32 years of age, Your Honor. She met her husband. He was the love of her life. They got married. Wonderful young couple. And as counsel noted, she always wanted to have kids, always wanted to have babies. She's a nurse. She went to be a midwife because she wanted to help other women that
Wow.
were in having babies, but didn't want to have all the medications. She was not a big medication person. Your Honor saw, I think there's probably close to 50 letters that have been submitted to you, and I know you read every one of them. The incredible outpouring of support by other nurses that work at Mass General Hospital. The fact that these women have a vigil, that they write the letters to this court imploring you to understand that you sentence, as far as bail issue, the woman before you, who was a beautiful person, who was thoroughly destroyed by these medications. That's for another day, obviously. A bail issue, bail argument. Your Honor is well aware under Commonwealth versus Vasquez at 481 Mass 750, Supreme Judicial Court indicated that this court, or the court, has vested in sound discretion of the bail judge. And the main considerations would be obviously the usual bail considerations: nature and circumstance of the offense, likelihood of success on the defense, roots in the community, and of course, as in Vasquez case, as well as Commonwealth versus Herring, 489 Mass 569, defendant's risk of flight. So now you have a situation, Your Honor, where this woman has incredible support, as you saw, letters from Foxborough that were signed by about 15 women, letters from her family, friends, letters from people she's known since the 6th grade that have stayed in touch with her. One thing that's a theme that is readily apparent is that Lindsay loved her children, that she would always, one of the letters said, she would always rub her belly, rub her belly. She had pictures of her pregnant, standing next to Patrick, hanging on the wall. I was in the house. The house is absolutely loaded with indicia of love for those kids. Photographs on the wall, little drawings, all sorts of games, toys, playpens, bassinets in the living room, in the dining room, the kitchen loaded with toys. Virtually the entire house, including their master bedroom. Toys, things for the kids. This is not a situation, Your Honor, that was planned by any means. This is a situation that clearly was a product of mental illness. Now, under the Vasquez case, one of the issues, as I said—
What's crazy to me is how much she was asking for help, like putting herself into the hospital, letting them know about the meds. They ignored her concerns.
Whether or not there's a risk
Absolutely
of flight,
crazy.
I
Devastating.
did submit to Your Honor a letter that was written by her physician, her attending surgeon, 𝗝𝗄𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗁 for him to write this letter for you to review. And I just want to make note that he makes reference to the fact that she is now in her 12th day of hospitalization following admission on January 25 after a 20-foot fall. She suffered, unlike when the government Friday was saying that she can move her legs and she's getting better, she's okay. No, she's not okay at all. He indicates that she suffered several severe spine fractures, including spinal cord transection. You know what that means. At the level of T5, T6. As you know, she had surgery for this from the orthopedic spine surgical service who performed a decompression infusion. Unfortunately, she is not expected to recover meaningful function at this point below that level of the spinal cord, which makes her a paraplegic, unable to move her legs or feel sensation from below her, he refers to umbilicus or belly button. He
Wow.
says she has no function below this level. Additionally, less active issues include rib fractures in the chest, both sides, cervical spine fractures, necessitate the wearing of a collar around her neck due to the cervical spine fractures. She's paralyzed. The doctor indicates that she needs significant medical treatment. Doctor recommends that she would be discharged to Spalding Rehab. Now, you know that we have Spalding Rehab. You know that we have the Worcester Hospital. This court is vested under Vasquez with your authority to have this woman not held on bail. Perhaps put a GPS on her, I guess, if someone's concerned that she's going to miraculously recover, which isn't going to happen. As your Honor knows, being a paraplegic, paralyzed, she can't move, can't get off the bed, she can't walk, she can't even go to the bathroom. She has to have 24/7 medical care. Her emotional state is so bad that there is a significant fear of suicide. She has to have someone sit in the room 24/7.
Wow.
They don't talk to her. They're not, chatting it up. They just sit there and watch out of that concern that she would commit suicide. So you have a paraplegic who can't walk, who is definitely a danger to herself, and the government wants to put her in where? Framingham State Prison? Plymouth House of Correction?
Think about it. It's been 3 years and she's still committed. Yes, Drakey was right, at Duxbury Hospital in Mass, where she is receiving long-term psychiatric care. 3 years later, and she's not even fully healed yet. And I'm afraid, like he said right now, this is back then, but allegedly she's still suicidal now. I feel for her. I just don't think she's ever going to be able to get. I hope she can heal, but I think after what happened to her and her kids, I worry that she would unalive herself one day. So she might not ever leave that facility.
There's no way that any humane person would do that, especially within the structure of our criminal justice system, where a person is presumed innocent. And I'm not suggesting with the facts that the government has read, but she has a good defense. She's got a darn good defense to this case because that's what happened. And I just want to share with you, Your Honor, one of the things that's interesting. When I was in the House, I came across a drawer that had a bunch of pill bottles in it. And I called the DA and I said, I got these pill bottles.
I think she's going to be like Andrea Yates. She's just going to be in the facility, forever rather than like a prison.
I'm going to be giving them to them. And it's all the Prozac and the Trazodone and all that stuff. But inside the drawer was this little vase. And I didn't know what it was. It just looked like a little vase to me. And my wife said to me, oh, that looks like a wish vase. I said, what's a wish vase? She said, when people write down little wishes and they put little pieces of paper and they put them inside the vase. And there are literally dozens of these little pieces of paper that talk about Lindsay's wish for happiness and health for her children, that she could get pregnant again, that she would be able to be with her children, little Callan, Dawson, Cora, that they would be happy, healthy, and successful. This is not a woman, Your Honor, that had any reason to harm those innocent children. My request, Your Honor, is that the court would
Wow.
put her on a GPS if you feel that's required, and let the doctors continue to treat her. Let her go to Spalding Rehab. She will sign a waiver that allows probation at any time to speak with her treating physicians or social worker, find out how she's doing. Does it look as though she's getting close to regaining the ability to walk? Well, she isn't, but nevertheless, they would be able to do that. And then the government would be notified, and they can come back in here again and try to hold her without bail. And my request would then be to Worcester for the emotional and the mental illness aspect. I don't think that it's fair or just or consistent with our duties to each other as human beings to put her in jail. I'm asking that she be allowed to continue with her medical treatment. Your Honor.
Commonwealth.
Your Honor, if I may, I did look into medical treatment if she's held. We were under the impression we had received information before that she could move her legs, but then we learned updated medical information that she, for the time being, is paralyzed from the waist down. If she is held, she could go to the Shattuck Hospital. If Shattuck does not have what she needs, she can be sent to another facility, and the corrections officers would go with her there. Shattuck would actually work with her, the doctors at the hospital she's currently at, to determine the best course of treatment. And if whatever she needs, she's going to get. But as defense counsel said, she is a danger to herself and, from the Commonwealth's perspective, others. And just because she is paralyzed does not mean she's not a flight risk. She will be in a wheelchair eventually, and she can be driven somewhere. She can be flown somewhere. It does not mean
Oh my
she will never be able
gosh.
to leave this area.
Just would like to say that
It's Massachusetts. It's the same state where 𝗝𝗄cy_𝗵𝗡 is dealing with a case of postpartum as well.
I have been, unfortunately, in the Shattuck Hospital. To suggest that she can get, quote, what she needs from the Shattuck Hospital is absolutely not true. The care that she's receiving at the hospital she's at now and the care that she would be receiving at the Spalding Rehab are light years ahead of the dismal, dank conditions of the Shattuck Hospital that we put our prisoners in. It's like something out of Iran, and that's not fair or correct.
Wow.
Thank you both. Both of you, all of you who appear before me that will be litigating this case are all very well respected. And I'm sure at some point in time in Superior Court, this case will be tried in a very professional and very well by both sides. As counsel stated in Commonwealth v. Vasquez, the Supreme Judicial Court addressed the issue of bail in first-degree murder cases, and Justice Lowy issued a detailed decision about the issues in these types of cases. The court found that a defendant charged with first-degree murder has no right to bail, but may be admitted to bail in the discretion of the judge. The court ruled that a judge should consider the nature and circumstances of the offense and weigh the defendant's risk of flight in light of the strength or weaknesses of the Commonwealth's case and the potential penalty of a sentence to life in prison. The court further noted that appropriate considerations for a judge would include the defendant's family ties, financial resources, length of residence in the community, character, mental condition, record of conviction, appearances at court proceedings, or any previous flight to avoid prosecution or failure to appear at any court proceeding. It is important to note that the purpose of bail is not to impose punishment. The court has conducted a careful review of the details of the case and the defendant's history. The court's reviewed the filings that have been made, as well as letters submitted by counsel for the defendant and the update that was received from her attending trauma surgeon. The factual allegations in this case are both horrific and tragic.
Yeah.
The potential penalty faced by the defendant, if convicted, is severe. The defendant has no criminal history. She does not even have a driving record. There is no evidence of any history of any abusive behavior by the defendant. The defendant was raised in New England and has extensive ties to the local area. She has an extremely supportive family. She had worked for several years in a local hospital, and a number of co-workers have written letters in support of the defendant and her character. She's described in these letters as an exemplary worker, colleague, and friend.
Wow.
In the letter submitted by her attending trauma surgeon, she has extensive injuries.
It's just heartbreaking that she got here because she wanted babies so bad and then had them. Didn't know that she was going to develop postpartum depression. And that's exactly how she ends up losing her babies. Yeah, I agree, Q. I do not know about MASP in California. If you do not check all the boxes of mental health issues, you do not get help. Yeah, I spoke about that earlier, how it's hard to get mental health help. And that's a big downfall in society.
That will require long-term
To society.
rehabilitation. Weighing what the doctor has written and the facts from the defendant's current condition, the court finds that there is minimal risk of flight given the defendant's circumstances. The court is going to make the following order on bail.
Yes.
The defendant shall.
Her family still supports her. The lawsuit we just read is, I know we're going a little backwards because we're deep diving. So we saw the first arraignment that just happened this week, and then we read the lawsuit that her husband just filed against her doctors because her husband is still standing by her. It's devastating.
Hospital until medically cleared to be moved to a new facility.
I don't know if necessarily, to be honest, what their extent of that is, but we're going to read his statement too, right after this. I believe he's somewhat standing by her to an extent.
As a condition of bail, the defendant is ordered not to leave the hospital until discharged to a new facility. The defendant shall provide notice to probation 48 hours in advance of any transfer to a different facility. Based on the letter of the doctor, it would appear likely that she would be sent from the hospital setting to a 24/7 rehabilitation facility, like the Spalding Rehab. As a condition of bail, if sent to a 24/7 rehabilitation facility, she is ordered to remain in that facility, with the exception of if she needed to be transported to a different medical facility or a hospital for an additional MRI.
And I believe they're still married too, so he hasn't divorced her. And he probably could, knowing the circumstances and what's going on.
Now, the defendant shall continue
fairly
to
easily.
receive mental health treatment while hospitalized and sign releases for probation to monitor compliance with counseling. In the event that the defendant were to complete the services at a 24/7 rehab and complete that care, the court would hold a further hearing as to whether or not the defendant were in need of further mental health treatment that would need to be done in an inpatient setting, or whether or not the defendant's mental health care could be provided in a residential setting. The court would direct a court clinician, court doctor, to consult with the defendant's mental health providers to conduct this evaluation at the appropriate time in the future. If the defendant were in a position that she was going to be discharged to a residential setting, both sides would have the opportunity to be heard further. Any discharge in a residential setting, the defendant would be subject to home confinement with appropriate electronic monitoring to monitor home detention. There would be exclusions that would be available if the defendant needed to attend medical or rehabilitation appointments, counseling sessions, or religious worship sessions. The court would have probation visit any proposed residential setting prior to the defendant being discharged to that type of a setting to ensure that such setting was appropriate and safe. The defendant is ordered to surrender her passport to probation. In the event that the defendant does not have a passport, she is prohibited from applying for a passport. The court is not going to set any monetary bail at this time.
Wow. Yeah, she got way more help than most people do. Excellent insurance and lots of support, and this still happened, you know? It has to be so hard for her husband. I would be torn between love and anger. But he was there, you know? He knew she was struggling. He was standing by her side, and so I can't imagine. Bless his heart. I don't think I could ever look her in the eye or forgive her if I was her husband. I don't know. She's not a flight risk. No, she's paralyzed. These cases make you wonder how the court really works. This lady's vilified by prosecution despite facts, and the au pair lady got 10 years. Oh man. It's very complicated. Let's read this statement from her husband from back then. It says the following words are from Patrick Clancy, January 28th, 2023. So just 4 days after this crime. Thank you for all your love and support. The warmth I received from the community is palpable, and your generosity gives me hope that I can focus on some sort of healing. I've seen all your messages and contributions, including some from people I haven't seen in over a decade and many I've never met. I see and appreciate every one of you. A lot of people had said that they can't imagine, and they're right. There's absolutely nothing that can prepare you. The shock and pain is excruciating and relentless. I'm constantly reminded of them, and with the little sleep I get, I dream about them on repeat. Any parent knows it's impossible to understand how much you will love your kids until you have them. The same goes for understanding the devastation of losing them. Cora, Dawson, and Callan were the essence of my life, and I'm completely lost without them. My family has been the best thing that ever happened to me. I took so much pride in being Lindsay's husband and a dad to all three of them. I always reminded myself that each day with them was a new gift. Callan usually woke up first and would rest his head on my shoulder for a few minutes as he adjusted to morning. Dawson typically sang or spoke his thoughts out loud for a while before we go to get him. Cora was a big girl and would simply walk downstairs. I can still vividly picture her coming into the living room each morning with her hair in a mess, smile on her face. We always started our days together, reading books, cuddling up on the couch, and playing with magnet tiles. I loved taking them places, whether it was scooting at Chandler Elementary, vacationing, skiing out on the boat, Duxbury Beach, one of our favorite places on earth. They gave me purpose, and I never took it for granted. There is now a massive void where that purpose once was. Cora had an infectious laugh and was stunningly beautiful. She was a cautious one, but it was really because she was so caring. She used to say she wanted to be a doctor and a mama when she grew up, and she would practice by giving Callan checkups. If she was leaving the house to go somewhere, she would pick someone to take care of Caroline and Charlotte, her baby dolls. She had all the doll accessories available, so her sitters were well equipped. Before she turned 2, she was already wrapping them in perfect swaddles. We would tell her she's such a good little mama. She loved all the babies, both real and pretend. She loved sloths, unicorns, tea parties, and going to lunch with Nana and Grandpa and giving presents to people. She knew everything about princesses, her favorite being 𝗶𝗲𝗆 the First. She truly loved her brothers and us and said it often in her sweet voice. We did a lot of father-daughter activities together, like skiing and visiting San Francisco or just talking. I loved her, my firstborn, so much. Dawson had beautiful, bold brown eyes that beamed with friendship. He was naturally humorous and generous beyond the norm of a typical toddler, always willing to share his toys with others. For all the love he received, he always gave back more. His best quality was his pure kindness. He loved trucks, tractors, and dinosaurs, Paw Patrol, worker guys, and being outside. He was adventurous, mischievous, and enjoyed causing trouble, which he typically found hilarious. He was also remarkably smart. We always said if we didn't save enough for retirement, it'll be okay. We'll just live in Dawson's guest house. He would hug me tight, tighter than most adults, and every night he told me in consistent words at bedtime, without fail, "Good night, Dada. I love you." We had a special bond from day one. He was my buddy, my first boy, and truly a gift. Callan was our easygoing child. I always said it was because he was the third child. He had to adapt, and he did easily. He was born with hardly any fuss and was by far our best sleeper. He was just an incredible, happy, and vibrant baby, constantly smiling. Our nickname for him was Happy Callan. He was sitting on his own, and you could tell he was enjoying his growing independence as he would grab any object within reach. Sometimes he joined my Microsoft calls in the background, playing in his jumpy. I would keep my camera on, too proud to leave it off. He started saying Dada whenever I walked into the room. The last moment we had together was our routine. I would come up from my office at the end of the day and swing him between my legs while he laughed and smiled. If I was ever having a bad day, Callan knew how to heal me. Perhaps that's why he held on a little longer, to spare me whatever pain he could. As excruciating as it was, I was fortunate and grateful to feel his warmth until his very last moment. Faith is my only hope of believing he felt mine. Callan died with enormous courage despite being so little. Maybe it was his way of demonstrating what I need to do to press forward. I'll always try to draw inspiration from him. He'll always be my little hero. I want to share some thoughts about Lindsay. She's recently been portrayed by people who never met her and never knew who the real Lindsay was. Our marriage was wonderful and diametrically grew stronger as her condition rapidly worsened. I took as much pride in being her husband as I did in being the father and felt persistently lucky to have her in my life. I still remember that very first moment I laid eyes on her, and I can recall how overcome I was with the kind of love at first sight you only see in movies. It really didn't take long before I was certain I wanted to marry her. We said I love you to each other multiple times a day as if it were a reflex. We habitually started every morning with a passionate hug, yielding a sigh of relief like we had received the perfect medicine. If too much time passed without a hug, she'd look at me and ask, "Did you forget?" We'd mutually understand the reality that people can have bad days, but we stuck to the rule that when one of us got lost, the other was always there to bring them home. Always. She loved being a nurse, and nothing matched her intense love for our kids and dedication to being a mother. It was all she ever wanted. Her passion taught me how to be a better father. I want to ask all of you that you find it deep within yourselves to forgive Lindsay as I have. The real Lindsay was generously loving and caring towards everyone, me, our kids, our family, friends, and her patients. The very fibers of her soul are loving. All I wish for her now is that she can somehow find peace. I promise I'll put my own energy into healing and rediscovering my purpose. I owe all of that to you. Duxbury Fire and Police, our compassionate healthcare workers, our local faith leaders, the Microsoft community, and especially Cora, Dawson, and Callan. I don't know how or when I'll be able to do it, but your love and generosity will help get me started. I know that love always wins. Cora, Dawson, and Callan, you gave me so much in your short time here. I don't know if the pain will ever go away, but I'll do my best to carry on in your honor. Dada loves you so much and will always remember you with love and endless gratitude. Well, that's very sad. I know. Hey, Mel. I imagine if this was a low-income woman of color, this case may be viewed differently. I feel she had the most favorable treatment by the court, public media. In my opinion, she has privilege. I don't know. I don't know. It's a very sad case. And it's been 3 years, right? Yeah. Just this past January 24th. These poor babies. Yeah, it's a rough case. It's a rough case for sure. I have 1,000 pages of documents to read on this case. So tomorrow we will start with the rest of them. So we did a pretty good deep dive today. We got the details of the case. We heard both arraignments. We heard the new lawsuit. We read his statement. He saw what state she was in and left her with the children and wasn't chasing doctors who should have been helping, though. I think it'll be, yeah. She probably shouldn't have been left alone, you know? That is definitely questionable. I don't blame him. It's multi-factor problems here. That you know what I mean? There's multiple problems here that all, and now she's requesting for a two-phase trial. So I don't think I've ever seen that. And I don't know how that works. I think she'll just be in a facility forever, though. I think that's my theory, is she might stay right where she is or go to a different mental health facility. But I fear that if she isn't doing well still, I feel that, you know, if they let her out, she might unalive herself or fall back into that depression, you know? I don't know. What a sad case. So I'll keep my eye on the docket. I'll try to pull if there's anything coming up before. I'm sure there's probably another hearing. I'll have to check for sure. But as we read the document, I'll give you guys updates if there's anything. There's a huge lawsuit that I want to read, and then there is the search warrants that basically list a lot of good information on this case. So we're gonna continue the Lindsay Clancy case. System failure. Yeah, I know. He probably trusted what they said. Don't we, when we go to the doctor most of the time? It's really sad. RIP to all of those babies. Yeah, everyone. Group hug. Thank you, highly favored, for being here. Okay, please tap that like button on the way out. You know the drill. We will be back. I will schedule the next Lindsay Clancy live. I want to go through all of those documents. Definitely make sure your notifications are on. We will be live in a little bit again. More true crime. Like always, yes, listen to Augie. Sad, sad case, man. So sad. Yes, Augie, please hit that like button, subscribe, turn on your notifications so you know when we're live. Exactly. Thanks, Melanie, everyone. So glad you're covering this. Yes, and we start a crazy case tomorrow as well. I'm not going to tell you guys which ones, but you will see. You will see. Anyways, thank you for being here. Please tap that like button on the way out, and I will catch you guys on the next live. Bye.